by nature, explorers. The same curiosity that sends us to the stars at the speed of thought urges us to go there in reality. And whenever we make a great new leap, we elevate humanity, bring people and nations together, usher in new discoveries and new technologies. So remember to look up at the stars and not down at your feet.
Right, hello and welcome to Pluto, the controversial planet, not planet, dwarf planet, whatever it is, planet. Discovered in the 1930s as the ninth planet. It was then declassified in 2006 as a dwarf planet. So Pluto has been a little controversial through human history and is still argued about today, whether it should be a planet or not. Now Pluto is the only world that's actually been named by an 11-year-old girl who suggested the name to her grandfather, who sent it off to a professional observatory, and so the Roman god of the underworld was named a planet-ish. It wasn't actually named after Pluto the dog, it was a Roman god. But from the new pictures of Pluto that we've seen, you can actually, if you Google it, someone's actually put Pluto the dog on there, and the shape actually fits some of the features of Pluto, which is quite funny. Now, past the planet Neptune is a huge flattened disk known as the Kuiper Belt, which is 20 times as wide and 20 to 200 times as massive as the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. So it's pretty massive and pretty huge. It's believed the Kuiper Belt is where the short period comets come from and acts as a sort of reservoir for all these bodies, in the same way that the Oort cloud further out acts as a reservoir for the long period comets. Now the difference here is asteroids are composed of metals and rock, whereas comets contain ice and dust. The Kuiper Belt is a collection of such bodies that orbits at the edge of the solar system. And this is where Pluto lies, along with many dwarf, minor and other bodies of rock and ice. Now, to be a planet has to do three things. It has to hit these three categories. First thing a planet has to do, it has to orbit the sun. Now, it does orbit the sun. A lot of people, whenever I ask them, does it orbit the sun? They go, no, it does. It orbits the sun, taking 248 years. Sometimes it's actually closer to the sun than Neptune. So it's not always the last planet. Its orbit kind of like, instead of going in a nice flat line like all the other planets, kind of goes up and down a bit in orbit, and it comes in so far that it actually goes in between Uranus and Neptune. So it's not always the last planet. But it orbits the sun, so it's a planet. Now, the second thing it has to do is have enough gravity to pull itself into a sphere or a circle, as I say if you're looking at it on the screen. It does. It's not a square, it's not a triangle, it's a sphere, it's a planet. Now, the third step is unfortunately kind of where it falls down. A planet has to have cleared its orbit and its neighbourhood of all the bits of rock around it. Now, it lives in a belt of objects, as we know, a Kuiper Belt, with some of these being bigger than it. So that's why it's been declassified. They found all these other objects, some bigger than Pluto, and they thought, well, we can't have all these things, we're going to have to just declassify it and not make it a planet, otherwise all the rest are going to have to be planets. Now, before the spaceship New Horizons reached Pluto in 2015, we had a very pixeled view of what Pluto actually looks like. We couldn't really work much out from it. Then as the ship approached, we began to get some amazing views of the dwarf planet, found it's actually got a moon of its own going around it and orbiting, which we've got a really cool picture of. So to a lot of people, if we look at this picture now, that looks like a planet. It doesn't look like a chunk of rock. That's a planet and there are things going on with it. It's got its own moon, it's moving around. To me, that looks like a planet. Now the problem we've got now with how we've classified things is, with so many moons stuck in orbit around them, most of which are trapped asteroids, Jupiter and Saturn also technically haven't cleared their neighbourhood of their area. So they've got tons of chunks of bits of rock flying around that they've caught on orbit with their massive gravity. The problem we've got is, as I said a minute ago, if we class Pluto as a planet again, it's going to bring 300 other objects with it, and we're going to have to remember all their names, especially you guys at school. We're not going to be able to do that, but the jury's still out on this one. I think Pluto might come back as a planet, especially with these new pictures and this new data we're getting from it. But the real question is, for me as an astronomer, can I see Pluto from Earth? Yes, I can. You're going to need a telescope. What you'll see is you'll see a ton of stars in the sky. There'll be a white dot. Each night, or within a few hours, that dot will move slightly compared to the background of stars. So if you're out there for a few nights, you'll see this white dot moving every single night across the stars. Now, this is either going to be a dwarf, minor, or some other kind of planet, an asteroid, or if it has a fuzz around it or a slight tail, it could be a comet. Now, if you look up on your app like Stellarium or something like that, or go online and look up, star charts and things, and where things should be, and you can't actually find what it is, you're like, there's something there moving differently to the stars, but I don't know what it is. You can send it to the British Astronomical Association in an email, and they have huge charts of thousands of objects. If they can't find out what it is, then you've discovered it, and you get to name it. So you can call it Planety McPlanetface, or maybe a minion like Bob or Kevin, something like that. Now, most people actually have their name put onto their discoveries. That's why comets and things have funny names, because it's usually the surname of the person who has found them. And everybody or anybody around the entire world can find these things and see these things. So the names are really cool, loads of different ones, and very hard for me to pronounce sometimes, which is always fun. So you could get, this is why I love astronomy, because a guy like me who didn't know anything about space can go out in my garden, pick up a telescope, which is pretty much just a mirror or a lens that gathers light, look up in my garden through it, find something flying through space, so a piece of rock flying through space, and then get my name on it forever. How cool is that? So any of us could become famous for having a name on a piece of rock or a comet flying through space. And that's why I love astronomy. Clear skies, guys, and remember, there's a billion worlds in your back garden.